Time being 7 o'clock on February 27th, 2024, I will call the Board of Sewer Commissioners meeting to order. The Zoom chat will not be monitored. Participants who wish to speak must raise the hand icon until the chair asks them to unmute. Note this meeting is being televised, streamed, or recorded by Bourne TV. If anyone in the audience is recording or videotaping, please acknowledge at this time, Mr. Ruff. If anyone from the public wishes to access the meeting, they can do so by calling the following conference line, 1-929-205-6099. The Zoom meeting ID is 884-3036-4341, and the password is sewer, all capitals. All items within the meeting agenda are subject to deliberation and votes by the Board of Sewer Commissioners. All right, we will start with a moment of silence to recognize our troops and public safety personnel. Thank you, and a salute to the flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Would anyone like to read the vision and mission?
I'll read the vision. Bourne is a proud community that embraces change while respecting the rich heritage of the town and its villages. It is a municipality based on strong fiscal government with a durable economy that recognizes the rights of all citizens, respects the environment, especially the coastal areas of the community, and the amenities that it affords. Bourne embraces excellent education and offers citizens a healthy, active lifestyle.
Anyone like to read the mission? All right.
Bourne will maximize opportunities for social and economic development while retaining an attractive, sustainable, and secure coastline and environment for the enjoyment of residents and visitors. Through responsible and professional leadership and in partnership with others, Bourne will strive to improve the quality of life for all residents living and working in the larger community.
All right. With those complete, we will move on to the first true agenda item. Number 4 is sewer allocation review for 93B Bravo Main Street in the 85 to 93 Main Street building.
And for the record, I'll be recusing myself
Yes.
from agenda item 4.
Do you have, what is our changes here? Do you want to
Yep, so,
briefly?
so we reviewed the application based on the building permit. There was a building permit submitted in November and a sewer allocation change, preliminary allocation in beginning of December. So we reviewed the application, the plans, and what the change is currently 85 to 93 is 4 units, and they're adding a 5th unit. They're subdividing unit 93 at the top section and also in the basement section. So their allocation is very minimal. Their allocation, they're only asking for 750 gallons. That parcel as a whole currently has an allocation of 13,000 gallons per day. But the issue for us is by adding the unit, it changes the way we bill, it changes the overages that we charge for the water for the water usage. So instead of only charging 45,000, allowing 45 gallons for 4 units, it's now 45 gallons for 5 units for that parcel. So it's the change of use that triggered the application
Right.
for the modification of the preliminary allocation.
Which is part of our discussion later on, obviously, but, so, it's not only a change of use, but there's probably a building permit to segregate the 2 units now.
Yes, that's, so there's a building permit that, I believe that the front unit will be 93A, and the rear and the basement will be 93B.
Okay.
It's second
So,
floor.
okay.
Can you
Yeah,
just
if you
jump
go to
up
the
to the mic? And
microphone.
I want to ask you a question anyway, so.
There's no basement unit. It's first floor and second floor.
So I just, what I'd like to see is, can we get a revised plan of the building?
They have it.
When was that one last updated?
A couple months ago.
A couple months ago. What did you give it to the building department?
Yes.
And does it cover the whole building?
That unit only.
That Can we get one for the whole building? Because
It's on file.
There were a couple changes. They said that it's not on file with the changes to the new unit.
Well, we've sent it 4
Could,
times.
well, could we get one with the whole building with this unit change? Is that a possibility?
Yes.
Okay,
Do you, you have the whole building and you have a separate for the subdividing.
yeah, can we get one just as the whole building
Sure.
with that subdivision?
That would be a problem.
That would be helpful for us, just so we can have it in the sewer. I'd like them to have that, if we could. So, anything from the board, any questions? Yes.
So I don't see this as a new application. I see this as an amendment of the existing application. I don't think that we should charge for additional allocation because there's clearly sufficient allocation in the existing allocation. As a matter of fact, based on, I don't know, did you pass that out to everyone?
I did, yes.
I asked for some calculations about what they're actually using, and they're way below. So I don't see for,
But our review, when's our review come? Have you
Well-
gotten an occupancy for the whole building yet?
Excuse me?
An occupancy for the whole building
Well,
yet?
the 93A is still under construction.
Okay. But when you finalized the building, you got an occupancy for the whole building, just,
It was a temporary occupancy for
Temporary.
93.
okay. So, I guess my question would be then, when does that trigger taking our actuals rather than,
well, I think we need the building to be complete. I mean,
that's what I'm saying, yeah.
that we need, and I'm just,
Excuse me, what are we using for gallons up to date now?
So in 2022, you used 734 gallons a day, and in 2023, it's 838 gallons a
Total
day.
building.
Total building, yes.
So is
Do I get a
that,
credit?
so, how many sewer connections to the building?
1,
There's just one, right?
correct.
Okay.
but there's a couple
Yeah,
meters.
so we currently build them, so in the additional packet that we gave you,
Yep,
so.
I'm looking at it.
We build them for 4 units.
Okay.
And then there's 3 water meters. So units 87 and 88, it's just 87, that's 1 meter. 89 is 1 meter, and 91 and 93 share a meter.
Okay.
So,
So is
I
that gonna
believe
stay
the-
the same? Is 93 gonna, because you're separating 93, right? That's splitting?
Well, 93 would be the fitness center and the restaurant,
So it'll be A and B, right?
correct.
So they're gonna share a water
Yeah,
meter?
probably.
They're gonna,
It's
okay.
not really worth putting
No,
another meter in.
okay.
I don't think they'll use 100 gallons a day,
Yeah,
you know?
Okay.
The gym, the restaurant that we're proposing to put in will use probably
Some,
a
yeah.
couple thousand gallons.
so the meter in unit 91 will feed 91, 93A, and 93B, and their overage will be multiplied by 3 times
okay.
for 3 units.
So,
But they pay for 3 units.
yeah.
Are you sure?
So
I
they're-
don't.
they're
we-
paying 3
We only have
user
3 meters
fees.
in that building? I thought there was 4.
We only receive usage for,
Well, one's never been turned on.
well, then maybe, maybe we should
Maybe I'll go down tomorrow
go down,
and
take a
give you a
look.
shout.
and-
Yeah.
Because if they're, we only get usage for 3 units.
Yeah,
So,
I bet it still hasn't been turned on.
okay.
There you go.
No, because when we built it, I said because tenants, yeah, so I said put before meters so we can monitor each unit's usage and build them accordingly.
So why don't you, maybe we can take a
It's
look.
gotta be 4
and-
meters.
And get
Okay.
it,
And if not, I'll report to you tomorrow.
There's a good chance there's 4 meters. Okay. So, as far as gallonage, we're not upping anything or changing anything?
so the way the request came in, they were asking for an additional 750 gallons a day. But that's up to you guys if you think we need to make that allocation 13,750. I don't think based on what we see so far, it's necessary.
I don't see that that's a necessity at this point. I mean, I don't think they need to add the 750 gallons. And does that change any of the fees that are currently?
I think the only fee that I think would still be reasonable would be the commercial connection fee, because that's based on I believe the additional square footage for the upstairs that may not have been included in the first allocation back in time. I don't remember exactly when the
Well,
first allocation.
I think I overpaid. I paid 13,000, and we can say I'm using 700 gallons a day.
This is for the square footage, because
It's
it's
just the
just
square
for
footage.
square footage.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
So the connection fee is like $623, I want to say $623.
correct.
So I would say no, there's no additional allocation fee. It's under the original allocation.
I think it's all still under the original allocation. Yeah, because we're not gonna have to add 750. I don't see that as a,
And that unit 93B can be added to the original 85 to 93 line, so that it's all included in that line.
what do you
So
mean?
in the allocation spreadsheet, 85 to 93 Main Street would be still 85 to 93 Main Street. It would just be A and B.
Yes,
There'll be an additional unit charge because
Right,
there's
right.
5 units
We understand
now.
that.
yep, it'll be
Yeah.
It's like
so-
1,500 a year or something.
whatever it is, yeah.
Whatever, yeah.
But it's really no different than, 83 and, or 80, 85 and 87 are one, you know what I mean? So as I look on the chart here, you know what I
Right,
mean? So it'll
yeah.
be, 93 will be added into that as, unless there's a separate water meter than that, we just.
So for overage charge, did we, when we,
You've never paid you don't.
I
pay
understand, but
overage.
if,
Or maybe
what
you
is
did in
my,
91.
how many gallons is it allocated the 13,000 gallons for the whole building?
Yes.
So for your allocation, for
Or
your
is
sewer
it separate
usage,
per unit,
are you talking for your water, are you talking for your allocation or for your water meter usage?
water meter usage?
So you get 45,000 gallons per unit,
Per year.
per year.
I would never use it in a million years.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, you're not paying overage fees.
You
You're
have been
the
paying
user fees,
overage.
yeah.
They have been paying overage.
Every-
fees.
Have?
Yeah,
We have?
yeah. In 2023, 91 Main Street used 270,000 gallons, so it was 180,000.
Oh, that's when they
gallons
did
of-
all the shrubbery.
And so you paid a
Okay.
$3,100 overage fee then. And then the year before, you paid $1,800 overage fee
Yeah,
with that
so-
unit also.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, a lot of that sprinkler, and they wouldn't put, we asked the Bourne Water,
To do a separate
get a
meter.
separate, and they wouldn't do it for, we
Just
wanted
for
to
the-
put a sprinkler line in,
Yep.
Yeah,
and they denied that. They said I had to pay for both,
yeah.
so.
So there will be overage fees on the 91 Main, or maybe 93, whatever, however that works
However it
out in
works out,
terms
yeah.
of
That
meter.
must be crew tie.
Yeah, right now it's 90, right now it's under 91. That's where they were using it all, yep.
Yeah.
Right.
So, do you want to talk about the application fee separately, or? we can-
Yeah, because that's on here, that would, we'll be able to discuss the changes to that under amend rules and regulations.
Abatement and application and design review fees, okay.
So this is just for the sewer allocation review, and per our review, there's no need to up it to 750. So we'll
Right,
maintain it at the 13 and adjust any fees for that.
All right.
Any issues with that, any questions?
No.
Do we need a vote for that?
we should,
Yeah.
It
I
doesn't
think
hurt.
we
Yeah,
should,
I-
especially
yeah.
because we'll be sending, we'll update the
yeah,
document.
so
for
let
the
me look
engineer.
at the document that's in
Somebody wanna
there.
make a
Because there were
motion.
like 2 different documents in our packet.
And the reason we did that was because we weren't sure how, so this might be another conversation for another time, but even if we decided to make it 13,750 gallons, do you consider that a brand-new application and you start charging that 750 at like the beginning, or do you consider it a total of, do you charge at the lower tier because you've
Well,
exceeded
so
that
that's the
threshold?
thing, later on when we discuss, when it comes back as an alteration or change of use, which this would be, it would be a lower,
It's an amendment fee. I mean,
different fee, hopefully. That's kind of where we're hoping to go with it, but we'll have that.
we're gonna have to have some fee discussions.
Yeah,
Because you start these fees and you start the regulations and you start using them and you're going, oh, well, yeah, how does that work? Yeah, okay.
Question.
Yes.
If I understood correctly. So if a tenant changes, we have to come back in every time?
If it's a change of use,
Yeah.
or if you're
If it's
seating.
more intense or less intense, you gotta notify the board, you know.
So, and theoretically, when a new tenant comes in, when they change structure and do all the changes inside,
Right.
they're gonna need to pull a permit.
Right.
Once they pull a building permit to make changes within the unit, we're hoping that that will, in the future, trigger this change of use for
Right.
us. So it'll be through your standard application when they go in and apply for building permit and such.
So will there be a application fee every time, the question was, every time we change a tenant, will there be an application fee?
I think that's what,
We're looking, that's what our discussion's gonna be later on in the agenda. I'm gonna say most likely there's gonna be a fee, but it's gonna be a lot smaller. It's gonna be
Yeah, I
more
think we're gonna
reasonable.
change the-
Yeah, we're gonna
change
change
the
that
fee
structure.
structure.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
Peter?
Molly's hands up.
I'm sorry, Town Administrator, Ms. McCall?
Thanks. So, two things. One, the Board of Sewer Commissioners was notified through the building permit process for this application. So I do think that that notification is working correctly. So when the building permit was applied for, your office was notified and that then started your review. I think the key here is if the tenant changes, but it's still considered the same land use. So if it's a retail to a retail, it will not trigger any change for us. But if it's changing from a different type of use in the table, in the land use code table, so if it's changing from retail to restaurant, that will trigger a use. Or if it's changing from like a restaurant to a barber shop or a salon or something like that, that would trigger a change of use. So it's not that you would necessarily need to see every tenant change. It's just if it's going from one type of tenant to another, then we need to verify that everything is still within bounds, especially when we have to count seats. If everything were to change to a restaurant use and then we had to count seats, that's when it really becomes critical.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily gonna be every tenant, but it's a change
Well,
of
if it's
use.
a change use, it would be every tenant.
Yeah, and then the thing is it will, like we were saying, it will be triggered when it comes through.
What does the application cover, the fee? Because we have to hire the engineer to give to the town to do all the calcs anyway.
Right, so that covers the staff time to do a review of.
To verify their work.
Correct. Yeah. and
You haven't set a price
Based on
on
our
that.
policy, and we have not set anything new for that yet, that's correct. Yep.
Sounds reasonable?
We tried.
Yeah, till I get the bill.
That's all we can do is try to be reasonable, right? So,
Right.
did you want to make a motion? Is that where you were going?
Yeah, so, and, I'm actually, so looking at, there were two, sort of drafts for like the letter.
Are you looking at the bracket letter?
No, I'm looking at the engineering department drafts, like page,
right after the application.
12 and
Yep.
10, 11 and 12. So, I think, that my motion would be that we approve, the additional unit at 93 Main Street, 93B Main Street, that no preliminary allocation fee is required because there is sufficient allocation existing at the property. But the new unit requires the commercial connection fee of 600.
Whatever it may be.
I'm gonna, $623.50 for this unit, which is $150 per unit, plus 10 cents per square feet of floor space.
Is that a new policy?
It's the existing one.
It was?
We
So
have
didn't I
a,
pay
it's
for
a
that the
new,
first
so
time?
it's a new connection that hasn't been previously connected.
But mine's already connected.
Yeah, but it is part of the building, it was supposed to be part of the building permit issuance. So it was due for building permit issuance. So our new regulations require $623.50 per unit for a commercial connection fee. right? Which is because it's a new
Correct.
connection.
It's the new unit, it's a new
new
unit, so it's
unit.
considered.
But it's
This is
because
new?
it's a new unit, that's where.
So
the
it's just
fee-
a paper bill, it's because there was nothing really, you didn't do anything for the $600, basically.
No, it's a connection fee for connecting to the sewer.
Which.
It's already
It's
connected.
technically already connected, but because it's another unit,
Right.
when the building was originally done, there was one less unit, so now you're adding that unit, the fee, yes, essentially goes to the paper trail and
Right.
keeping
Right. It's
staff.
it's actually part of the building permit process, so.
Correct. Peter?
Yes, did you finish your motion, or you want to continue it?
No, I think that's it.
Second.
I don't wanna make a mountain out of a molehill, but the $600 isn't gonna change my life.
So it's-
Just for other people, it doesn't really make sense to charge.
It says connection, even though it's not a connection, it's part of the original connection fee, so we're going back to the original connection fee. So instead of, what was it, 4 units, it's now 5.
Right.
So that extra unit,
Yeah, but you're billing me another $1,500 a year for that extra
But that's the
unit.
annual user
That's an
fee. It
annual
has
use,
nothing to
right.
do with the
Well,
connection.
maybe.
This
it
is
should
to
be
create the
changed
new
from
account.
Connection fee to something else, because it's really not a connection fee.
Yeah.
And I think people would feel more comfortable, because you're saying connection fee, there's not a connection fee. It could be a new use fee,
Well,
but
it's defined, it's kind of defined in our regulations, and it is a
it
new.
does say per unit.
Yeah,
So we're basing it on
commercial
per unit
connection,
now.
so if I built 100 units down there, I would have to pay
There's a.
$150 per unit.
Per unit.
per unit.
Plus 10 cents per square foot of floor
In
space.
residential, stays residential, you don't have to pay another fee.
It's not a commercial connection fee, there's a residential connection.
Thank you for the education. And we might have two
So,
sewer
but
connections.
what we did do, what this motion does do is waive a $3,750 allocation fee
I appreciate that.
that you're not going to have
So
to
that
pay.
gets waived.
Thank you.
Yes.
Did you
So-
vote?
Not yet. I have a motion and a second. Any other comments, questions, anything? No, I don't see any hands. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstained? We have one recused. You are good.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Good
sir.
night.
Thanks for coming in, sorry you missed your Celtics game.
And I'll get back to you on those.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
You good with the letter?
This-
So the preliminary allocation fee is 0, and the commercial is still that 623, right?
Vinny, I just want to remind you that if you could get that whole building
I'm
plan
gonna-
to the sewer department, it would be good.
I'll call Greg in the morning.
Okay, thank you. All right, sewer allocation is complete, and we will go on to number 5, operation allocation review process.
So based on the conversation at the last sewer commissioners meeting, I believe 12 Kendall Ray brought up the conversation about if we change a preliminary allocation or operational allocation or to an actual usage within the sewer system. So we kind of made a simple checklist based on what everyone thought would be included in there would be good. So this basically just takes the past 3 years of usage, and it'll show you the preliminary allocation and the operational allocation, and then if you ever wanted to, you could update the allocation. One thing as we were going through this did kind of concern me is, I want to say MJ had asked for peak usage. That's really kind of the Title V usage. Because I think when we can think of peak usage, we're thinking more about pipe size, and like, unless you were, so I didn't know.
No, I was thinking seasonal, like July. Are they
Okay.
using more like
Are they using more during the summer because
summer,
there's more?
So that's what you-
actual
okay.
water usage
Okay.
at the peak? What's the peak month?
Yeah.
Monthly flow. I'm
Okay,
just,
that's what I was trying, okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
so
what I'm
even on the
thinking.
form here, it says peak flow, and it counts for,
Water in your lawn.
Right, because I wasn't really sure what you wanted to see there.
yeah, so
Okay.
that's just like,
Businesses and more, right.
are we using more in July, or are we using more in December, or, that
Okay.
kind of peak, rather than,
Okay.
size, like you were. So I like adding the updated allocation line, I do like that. Kind of breaks it down, gives you that option. Any other questions with that? So, this is just a change to the existing one, correct?
We didn't have a checklist.
Okay.
And this isn't just for Kendall, I think the conversation was just to see how we go about doing it in the future.
Yes.
And how we'd make the decision, like,
Yeah, how do we,
Right.
this breaks it down for us, and I guess this allows us to make a motion to make it an actual and then readjust our available.
was there information in last month's packet about the actual usage at Hampton Inn? I feel like there was.
It was just based on the allocation spreadsheet. It was just, that's where the usage was, the information was. So I wasn't actually bringing that particular project back, I was just kind of bringing back the process, and then once we
Okay.
agreed on a process, we could bring that back to the
Right.
table.
So I think looking at, like, we have it in the policy as 3 years, so looking at the last 3 years to see what the use was, the actual use was in those 3 years. And then maybe for each one of those years, we want the peak monthly flow. Peak month, so you have like the average monthly flow, and then you have the peak flow in that calendar year. So if they're using an average of 3,500 gallons, but in July they're using 5,000, you really have to use 5,000 as your basis, because you don't want to get in
Theoretically,
a situation where everybody's at their peak flow and the plant can't handle it.
Theoretically, they could have a 5,000 gallon month,
Yeah,
12 months a year.
My only concern with that is we only receive meter data in 6 months blocks. We don't get monthly, from,
data.
from the water district, we only get water usage, so we could probably try to figure like an extrapolation, but I don't,
you know, that's really weird, because EP,
Yeah, I thought they had high,
they gave us. in-
maybe they got
in
it
the
right
comprehensive.
maybe they got it from the water department though.
I don't know if it's available, so maybe we don't need it all the time, but maybe the water department, when we are doing this review, can give us that monthly data.
okay, so we can
I
ask
don't
for
know
that
how
like a
often they
year.
do, maybe they only read the meters every 6 months, they probably do,
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
and that would be,
So you, depending on, usually they kind of split the
but your
season.
meter reuse is like, and Marlene has her hand up, June to December, right? And January to June, so your June to December would give you your peak 6
Right.
months.
Yeah.
Your peak 6 months.
Yeah.
But, Madam Town Administrator?
Thank you. I don't want to interrupt this conversation, but just briefly, I do want to let you know that when Matt and Tim and I have actually been kind of taking a very close look at things here, and I just want to let the board know that if you look at this form, we have preliminary allocation, operational allocation, and then the 3 years of actual. Your rules and regs have a vote of the Board of Sewer Commissioners at the building permit stage to set an operational allocation. And that is not something, we've actually been doing, so that's just, it's another piece of the process that I just want us to kind of look at and think through on whether or not there's going to be a change from the preliminary to an operational at building permit stage, and then another change after we have 3 years of actuals to average. So if we think there's gonna be a shift at the building permit stage, then we just need to look at whether or not we issue refund and things, because it's unclear to me what we're trying to get at there. So that's something that we should talk about more.
Yeah. So originally, we were looking, I think the goal was, you get a preliminary, and then once you get it operating for a number of years, you get to an actual. And once we got to the actual, we wanted to be able to set an allocation going forward that would
Yeah.
maybe save us.
And that makes perfect sense, but we've got this middle step here of operational allocation at building permit. And at building permit, nothing is working, nothing is flowing yet.
So should that be at the end of one year, or?
Do we need that? Is that something we need? Or are we gonna deal with that through modification instead, through a modification process? Because having the initial design flow makes perfect sense, and then having the 3-year average of actual readings makes sense. But what are we trying to get at with the building permit stage? Unless EP, when they put this together for us, unless EP was anticipating that plans would change between their conceptual preliminary allocation and the actual issuance of building permits. And that's a speculation on my part.
Go ahead, MJ.
So I will tell you what my take on this is, that we have projects that receive a preliminary allocation very early in the design process, and what actually gets built, or what actually is at the time of occupancy, what is there,
Once the building's
could be
complete.
different. So it is important that the operational allocation that is voted provides adequate allocation for what is built. But the question is, if you get into a situation where there was a plan for 200 units, and through the planning board process and everything else, it only ended up being 150 units at the time of operation, when you vote the operational permit, you would vote based on what was actually built. 150 units times whatever that Title V is, and then that becomes the allocation. And then 3 years later, if you're only using 50% because the Title V allocation is double what
you really need, yeah.
actual is, then you would change it then. So I think there's 3 steps, but I think at the operation,
The operation is supposed to be at occupancy, even though it's in building. I think it's supposed to be at the once the building's done and gets occupancy, that's where the operational is supposed to come in.
and I think one of the things you have to think about, though, is take the 3, and this is true of the 85 to 93 Main Street. It's also true of 340 Main Street. So 340 Main Street got its operational,
Preliminary.
its occupancy permit,
Yep.
right? With 2 vacant units. So, but those were planned in the allocation as 2 restaurants, 60 seats. If that plan, if they are not occupied, but that's still the plan, you could leave that allocation there because it hasn't changed. But if it's actually built and built out and that's not what's there, you could change it. There are no refunds.
No. But, and again, that comes with, if they come in to change that unit and they pull their building permit, that will trigger that change of use or a re-review because it needs a new occupancy.
Yeah, so one of the things I started thinking about is we have the 340 Main Street, and the restaurant that we approved had 54 seats, some inside and some outside, and I don't know if they count the same for Title V or not. But then, if there's only 6 units left, if there's only 6 seats left in the calculation of the gallons per day, when they go to occupy that other unit, we may have to look at the allocation,
There may
and
be
it
a
may
change
have
of
to be
allocation,
upped. So when it has to be upped is really important. But I do think we should vote a final one. There should be no doubt that we're going to grant the adequate allocation based on what we've done. But if there's been a change in the building plan based on at the time of occupancy, we might want to adjust the allocation at that time.
Yeah, and I think that's what
And
we
then you
discussed
have,
it, yeah.
after that, then you have another 3-year
Three-year
review.
review,
Because
right.
there's really the difference between the Title V calculation and then the actual calculation. And we need to be able to have it keep going.
Matt?
Is anyone concerned that an owner may not want to give that allocation up? If they've paid for that allocation, although it's in the rule, are you concerned that they would say, well, wait a second, for instance, 85, I have 13,000 gallons of allocation, and now you're telling me I'm,
You mean with the actual, once we get to the actual?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there any concerns with that?
If they're not using it,
We own it. It's not their allocation.
Right.
It's
Okay.
our allocation that we've granted
That's a
them.
good question,
and it's in
though.
our policy, that there's a 3-year review.
And it's a reserve. I
Right.
mean, they decide what they said, this is what I want for my allocation, and this is what I'm gonna build. And they want to reserve that. So when they go for financing or go for whatever, they've got that allocation. If they're not gonna use it,
Once-
they can't hold it. It's clearly written in the that
Yeah,
you
our-
have
our
to use
policy
it
covers-
or it's gonna come back. I mean, may not like it, but
Yeah,
that, it is what it is.
but it's pretty clear in the policy that the 3-year review and that's
Okay.
what's gonna happen, so. Obviously, we're gonna make sure that we leave plenty when we set that new allocation after the 3 years, but, if they're gonna change their use, and it's a big change that requires a lot more flow, that it's gonna hopefully get triggered under our new system, and then we'll have to up it.
Okay.
That'll make that change. So it's not like they'll never get it again. There's still opportunity for it, so I don't think they completely lose anything. It's not theirs to lose per se. They apply for a certain amount, and then, as our policy says, it gets revisited, and then we reset it. And then if they have to come back and get more because they're changing it to a certain unit that requires more, then that comes under hopefully our new policy.
Okay.
I think we're good on that. Madam Town Administrator?
Thank you. Thank you for this discussion. It is helpful, and I do want to recommend that we keep the operational allocation step at the building permit stage and not the occupancy stage.
Okay.
Okay.
Because there's nothing worse than people, lined up with their movers and ready to open, and then we tell them they have to wait for a sewer commissioner's vote. So, but this was a good conversation, and I think the disconnect was, is the preliminary allocate, or is the operational allocation at building permit stage coming in like right on the heel of the preliminary allocation, or is there a significant lag there? So for some projects, there may be no difference, and they happen almost simultaneously. So, I just wanna caution the board to keep it at building permit stage though, and not change that to occupancy permit.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it can stay in there, but it's essentially a part of the occupancy, I would say. It's at that last stage per se. We just don't want to hold up anybody's occupancy. I see where you're going with that. MJ?
So I want to make a distinction between the sewer development fee that's paid at the building permit, at the time of the building permit, and the setting of the operational allocation, which is at the time of the occupancy permit. They don't have to do anything. It's just a vote of the sewer commissioners onto what the actual operation is. The sewer development fee is at the time of the building permit when they have to pay their fee. That's,
Right now, the rules and regs have the operational allocation vote taking place when they apply for building permit.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know that that's where we want it, correct? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think she's saying that she does want it
No.
then?
Keep it there.
Okay.
Keep it there, because it takes a vote, and we have to schedule it on your agenda. I don't I don't want to hold up anybody for occupancy. If we need to delay a building permit issuance, that's much easier. But if people are done and have advertised an opening and have a mover scheduled and have staff starting, it's a much harder, logistically, it's much harder for us to delay someone's occupancy than their building permit. So keep it at the building permit stage, because that's when the plans are final anyway.
They should be.
Oh, well, in that case, I just leave it as the
Yeah.
allocation, whatever the allocation was.
Right.
Because there could be change after the building permit or when new occupancy, yeah, so I would just leave it then.
Yep.
And I think that's what the regs say, you know, they will vote the operational allocation.
Yes.
As the preliminary allocation as an operational allocation.
Okay. So is there anything else we need to touch on with this, and do we need to vote on anything?
I think, oh, I'm sorry. I think the only thing I would is, do you want to discuss a percentage, or how, are you going to take that on a case-by-case basis if you decide to,
As far as setting the 3-year
yeah.
review?
But do you want 3 years after it's full capacity? Or do we look at 3 years and then say, okay, maybe we want to bump this another 2 years before we make a
Well,
decision?
that's kind of where it's been. So typically, I mean, I know a number of them we pushed off because of COVID. So some of them came up for 3-year review, and we pushed them off because they weren't full during COVID. Yes?
Well, I also think if you have a situation where the unit that has that allocation and it's been vacant, it hasn't been filled, for whatever reason, I mean, that if it's only at 80% capacity, then that should be fit into the calculation.
Okay.
So that, you know, we're not docking them for something that's still a vacant unit that they're still paying sewer for.
Right.
You know, so, yeah, I think the date of occupancy, I think the percent of capacity at the time of review, what the preliminary allocation was, operational allocation, if it's different, have to be adjusted up based on the building permit, right?
Correct.
The 3-year average, I think I would take the 3-year actual water usage by the two bills, if you get the two bills, like the first bill, second bill total year. I think I like adding up things rather than trying to break them down.
Right.
Determine what the 3-year average is for all those three things, and then the peak flow, we think we can't figure out unless the water department something.
Unless you want to put a peak flow for a year.
Actually, probably the way they got that is not from individual meters, it's from the meters that they get. We have meters at Hideaway, and we have a downtown meter that goes to like Wareham.
Yep.
And then there's the one at the plant. So those meters, those get multiple readings, so they can do those water readings, but they're not gonna be to individual people, they're only gonna be in system-wide.
Right.
You could do an extrapolation and kind of take a factor for the system on a whole and utilize that. It could be
Yeah, and
like
that's
2.7 and we could just use the same factor.
And I think there's something in the DEP calculations that EP uses for the comprehensive management plan. They go, this is your average, and then there's some 80% rule or something, and figure that, so kind of, whatever their average is, make the allocation, make that 80% of what you're gonna do your allocation. I think it's 80%. Yeah, this'll be good, though. I mean, I think it's great to have a form. I thank you for,
Well, it's nice to have it all in one place.
yeah.
So do you need anything else tonight on this part of it?
Would you want us to tweak it with the changes you made?
Yeah.
And bring back next month with, like Kendall Ray, the
Yeah, as an
information put in there and see
Yeah,
how
you
it
could
works?
put that in as
Okay.
an example, that would be good, yeah. So bring it back with the changes and then maybe put Kendall Ray in there as the example and then
Yeah.
have the two. Yeah, that would be good.
Good.
So that'll be back. And that concludes that, and then we'll go into our policy. We're gonna go to policy 6A is gonna be amend rules, regulations, abatement procedures, final reading, and then also application and design review fees. So we'll start with abatement procedures, final reading. Just give me 1 second here.
So the only change from last month is I cross-referenced the abatement form in the attachments
Okay,
in the body of the rules and regulations.
okay. Okay, does anybody have any questions or issues with this last change?
If you look at attachment E,
Yep,
I know there's a 24-month consecutive months before asking for an abatement, but why should I, if I'm, let's say I do a raise and rebuild, I tear the house, I rip the foundation, and now I'm waiting to get my architecturals and everything approved and through the permitting agencies before I can pull the building permit and put it in. Why am I gonna pay for something that I'm not even gonna use?
If it's a raise,
You're
If
not
it's a
tearing
ra-
anything down without a building permit. anyway.
right.
no.
Well, you have a demo permit to tear it down, but I'm just saying, it says the water's been shut off at the street for at least 24 months. And if you're gonna do a raise and rebuild,
May I address that?
Yes, please.
So a raise and rebuild would be considered under the terms for rendered uninhabitable through demolition, etc.
okay,
The first part, water being shut off at the street, is people who voluntarily have their water shut off.
Have their water shut off for at least 2 years. yeah.
okay, understood.
So if they've shut their water off and it's been off for 2 years, then, yeah, for 24 months consecutively, then.
No, it's good to have the clarification.
I think we talked about that one other time, right? Anything else? Anyone? Anyone have anything else? Do we wanna,
Make a motion to approve the abatement request language for the sewer regulations, section 6.2.4 abatement request, and the attachment E sewer bill abatement form as presented.
okay, and do I have a second?
Second?
Seconded by Melissa. Okay, any further questions, comments? Anyone? All right. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstained? It is 500. All right. So now we can go into discussion on application and design review fees. So, in your packet, you'll see there's a couple of things that were sent back and forth with Marlene and Matt. Some suggestive material. And as we were discussing earlier, one of the big ones is the change of fees when they come in and make their original design fees, and then segregating out or separating out when they come in for a new use or change of use fee, was part of the discussion that we were having earlier. Anybody have any comments or want to start any discussion specifically? Anyone? Suggestions? So I had thoughts, I'll just throw it out there, I had thoughts, changing that and adding into their, 150, 250, somewhere that range, a small fee, that if somebody has a change of use, much like 93, they split the unit, So they'd still have to pay for the additional unit. But when they pull a permit, building permit, it would then trigger a change of use fee, whether it be $150, $250, rather than a whole new, what is it, $1,500 for a,
Yeah.
so that's kind of where I was thinking of going. If anybody else has any other comments or questions they want to discuss this, I'd love to get some feedback.
It's good to charge something. You get something back for the fact that you are doing that change.
Well, and the staff does have to review it.
Yeah.
And ensure that we have the right calculations and we're gonna have enough allocation. So there is a review that is done by staff, so there is a fee that should be associated with it.
Well, it's wanting to make the town hall without really putting the knife in the local business person or property owner's back. You know, you're getting back, you know, what you asking the town to do. And so,
Right.
I mean, I don't want applicants to be charged unfairly just for the sake of grabbing some money, you know, work with them, you know, so at least the town gets what they should, what is a fair fee, and at the same time, you're working with the property owners, so they're not getting gouged.
They're not paying the entire fee. Matt, comments anywhere?
I think that's fine. The only thought I had was you could offer one free modification. Like, you're allowed to come back with one modification, and then after that, there's a set fee.
So if they're doing construction, they're allowed to have a modification without any penalty.
Yeah,
But are you saying, like, if they pull a building permit for a change of use, does that also apply?
I kind of thought if there was, like, 85 through 93, that wasn't a giant, it was a modification, but it wasn't a huge amount of staff work.
Right.
So, I mean, you could sort of dollar figure on that, but I just don't know if you
Well, so I'm just
offer
gonna-
one modification, like, so say they came back, it's the first time they've modified, do you offer one freebie and then have a fee after that?
Well, so my only concern with that is if you offer a freebie, which unit gets the freebie? Because if you're offering it to the building,
Okay,
Yeah.
do you know what I'm saying? Like, so if somebody from unit 93 comes in and does a modification, there's no fee. But if 85 comes in and does a modification, then there's gonna be a fee. That's my only,
and that opens another conversation up too that I've been thinking about lately. We give these allocations to the owners as one allocation for the building.
building.
At what point do then all of a sudden do we start should it always be with the owner of the building, or sometimes they start going to different units?
So
So
as far as
so is
sewer,
does he have to come in, does the owner have to come in for their building for the modification? Or does the leasee come in? Who do we give the,
well, so the owner of the building in this particular case carries the
Allocation.
allocation, and he also carries the one connection. So it's one sewer connection, so it has to stay with the building and the owner. If they were separated out to each having their own connection, then that might be different.
okay,
MJ?
Yeah, so example is Domino's and Jersey Mike's, which were those units up where Starbucks is. Those are all somehow separate units that, so it kind of depends. Some of the units, it's one whole building, and some of the units, it's like separate, So it
Well, so
makes
like-
it a little bit, it kind of has to be a little bit flexible.
okay.
Yeah, and it depends on how many connections, really. That's what it comes down to. So like, and PetSmart, that's a good building like PetSmart is probably 3 units.
Yeah,
Originally.
and it doesn't even have an allocation because it was, I think, there beforehand or something. I
Yeah,
don't know.
but I'm saying like, when the building was originally built,
Yeah,
that could have been 3 units, and they just took all 3 units, and now they have one, you know what I mean? So, yeah, there's gotta be some fluctuation to that.
Okay,
I
I
think.
just don't know if it should always be the owner.
Yeah, I mean, I like the thought process, but again, it's kinda hard in that particular situation. So I think you just have to stick with that one.
Okay.
If they pull the building permit, it triggers it, then they, whoever pulled the building permit, yeah. MJ?
so I was thinking about this because, you have your sewer service application form, and I was looking at the sewer connection application flow chart, that's table 3.1 in the regulations. So for the residential connection up to 500 gallons, it says general sewer service application section. I think that's section 1. But are those people paying $1,500?
Yes.
The first, yeah.
The initial.
And so, I don't know if we charge a lot of residential up to 1,500, up to 500 gallons per day. That's part of the residential reserve. So it's really not even triggering an allocation. So I kind of thought, what I started thinking about is there's a difference between a general service application where I'm coming in and I'm gonna be, I guess, a new house or something. We don't get that many of these, I don't think, but, residential connection, 500 gallons or less. What if the general service application was like a $250 fee? So they pay $250. Then if they go into the next section, which is the residential connection greater than 500, or the mixed use commercial connection, they pay $1,250 because it's an allocation review, it's a design review, it's another. So the general you might have to pay $250 for the general plus $1,250 for the allocation design fee.
So
And
everybody
then if you're an
pays-
industrial, should we be charging them more than the general? I mean, I don't know what's involved in that, but it seemed that would be much more complex. So maybe we want to send an industrial application fee. So depending on what sections of the thing you're filling
So are you
out,
saying that the general 250, everybody pays?
everybody pays. Then the people that are filling out maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 got the $1,250. And then if you're filling out
An
section
industrial.
4 for the industrial, you're gonna have a different fee. And then if there's an amendment to your application, but triggered by a change in building permit or something, you pay a new $250 fee for every time it happened. You know what I mean? It's an amendment. So
Yeah.
if you come back and it's 85 to 93 Main Street and you make an amendment, you pull a building permit and you're making an amendment, or you have a tenant that came in that needs more allocation, so you need more allocation, you're gonna pay a $250 fee for a review. So you might have a new and then amend, the form might have like new, general service, new or amendment, and then allocation and other. Does that make sense? I like things, I
were you able
like
to pull it
form
up
to
and follow
follow
along?
function.
Yeah, that's what I was just trying to do, yeah.
Yeah,
So it sounds like we want to have a workshop and kind of break this down and maybe bring a draft. Maybe we can put a draft together. And then we can leave the fees out with a suggestive fee. We can just set those as we go. So maybe we bring this back
Yeah.
for our next meeting and,
and the other thing is, while we're doing that, we should look at that sewer connection application flow chart for the connection fee, because the connection fee is section 6.1.3, but it's not in this flow chart at all.
okay.
I don't know if it should be there, but I just thought that flow chart should be looked at. And then on the attachment C, sewer user rates, fees and fines, which is part of our regulations.
Yep.
We still have listed preliminary allocation extension fee, and I think we took that out of the regs. And then
It's
there's,
still in the
it's in the
attachment
fee list.
C, but it's
Yeah.
out of the regs, you're saying?
Yeah, I think
It
we
might
took
be,
that,
yeah.
I think we took it out of the, we just said that we had never charged it And I think
feel
we
like I
said
remember having this
we
conversation.
could we could take away their
Just
allocation.
withdraw the allocation, yes.
You know, we could say, look, you're not doing anything, we can take it away, but we're not gonna charge people for extensions,
Right.
so. And then there's these residential connection fee, commercial connection fee, sewer development charge. There's no definitions for those in the definitions, so it's hard to explain to someone what they are.
What is it?
There's, some of those fees don't have definitions.
Oh, definitions for fees?
In the definitions of the regs, so. I don't know. I spent way too much time doing this weekend.
So is everybody kind of in favor of, well, first of all, the fee structure that MJ suggested, as well as the, smaller fee if somebody comes back for
Amendment.
use or
Right.
amendment? Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any other issues? I think Matt and I will touch base, and then we'll put together a quick draft, and then we'll bring it back to the next meeting.
That'd be great.
We'll put it on.
And then, on that agenda, could you put consideration of refunds for?
Yeah.
Like the two people that have just paid those?
Yes.
Yeah,
$1,500 fees.
yeah.
So we'll adjust fees that have been done for the last two.
It won't be a total
projects.
refund, but a partial
Yeah,
refund.
we'll make adjustments for abatements for anything that we make changes to.
That'd be good. Thank you. This is good.
Okay? I don't think we need any votes or anything on that. We'll bring that back. All right. A. B, Sewer Enterprise Fund Financial Policy. What are we doing with that, Matt? Where are you at with that one?
So I don't believe we've made any changes. The policy, have we had another, I don't believe there's been a policy meeting on that yet. I haven't been part of one.
So the new financial policies went to the select board, and this is the sewer enterprise fund portion of that
Yes.
is the sewer
And we
commissioners.
talked about that during
Yeah.
budget talks, coming back to this, right?
Yeah.
So,
I don't know if it's in our
the enterprise fund policy? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's in there.
Yeah.
This was brought back to this agenda to discuss whether or not MJ wanted to discuss whether or not you wanted to set, a specific dollar amount target for,
Yes.
retained earnings.
Yeah, do we want to have a certain percentage or a dollar amount or something? A gauge, so to speak, correct?
Yeah, similar to iSwim, or leave it more open-ended, where you the board at the time has to look at what's on the capital plan and set rates and set retained earnings, targets accordingly as to what you want to achieve over your capital plan.
So this is, up until now, this has just been open-ended. MJ and I did have a discussion about this previously. Do we want to have some sort of guidelines, if you will, as to how much we should have as far as monies in the sewer enterprise fund?
As a minimum or as a cap?
As a whole.
As a whole.
So do we have it as
As a percentage or a
you-
dollar, actual dollar amount?
dollar amount or percentage, or how do we define how much we should have in there? Like free cash has to have a certain amount,
Right.
and,
Right.
but similarly, correct?
Right.
But currently it's by town meeting vote? No,
No. It's
No.
open.
Yeah.
okay.
The uses of it requires town meeting
Yeah,
action.
the uses of it, but the actual amount that we have in there is open. There's no
Well, it's whatever's-
set anything.
Well, whatever DLR certifies.
Well,
Yeah, they certify what's in
So,
there.
so we have in the financial policy for the general fund, right?
Yep.
We set targets for free cash and targets for stabilization. And then we set in the proposed policy, overall, between free cash and stabilization, 8 to 15% of the general fund operating budget. So that's a target for free cash and stabilization. So in some enterprise policies, like our ISWIM policy has, retained earnings should be maintained in a minimum balance of 3 months operating expenses in cash. So that's working capital. You take your 3 months of average, which is basically taking your operating budget, dividing by 12 times 3, and then,
Right.
whatever. So based on an operating budget of 1,501,438, which is the FY '25 proposed budget, 15% of that, if you used a 15% rule, is 225,215. If you use the 3 months working capital rule, it's $375,359. So are these the numbers that we feel satisfied with? It doesn't, I looked at Needham, there are sometimes you can put in capital, you can look at your capital plan, but we didn't say we're gonna do so much working capital, so much.
Right.
Look at what's in our 5-year plan, look at, so, and usually you do like the 3 months working capital or the 15%, maybe like whichever is, you don't usually do both, but, I think that helps. We have, one of the things that's been happening is that we have these allocation fees, that we've been getting, and sewer development fees.
Yep.
And so last year, in the last fiscal year, FY '23, so when retained earnings was certified this year, $254,172 had been paid by fees for allocation in that fiscal year, which actually went back into retained earnings. So our retained earnings went from 856,000 to $1 million, over $1 million. So I think we need to get a handle on what we feel is adequate retained earnings, especially in the time we're in right now, where, yes, we have a lot of things capital on the horizon, but we're also in a period of time where we're paying for a system that doesn't have it's not using its full capacity yet. It doesn't have all the users that are gonna be paying for it. And so when we originally talked about the wastewater treatment plant, we told people at town meeting that we were gonna be using these allocation fees to help pay the operating expenses when the plant came on, so the people who were existing users weren't gonna be paying for this plant.
Correct.
And so I think we need to give some special consideration to that. And, I think we need to be careful of being too over-conservative and not giving enough rate support. So it's not a decision we can make tonight, but I think we brought our retained earnings from
6 to over $1 million, something like that.
6/30/18, at the close of the 2018 fiscal year, we had 466,000 in retained earnings, and now we've got over $1 million. So we've made significant progress, but in that same period of time, the rates have gone from 700 to like 1,200,
Yeah,
and so.
almost 1,200.
And so I think we have to be careful of not using enough of the retained earnings to support the ratepayers until we get enough users.
Yeah.
And that's,
And we have been. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been
And so I'm-
staying with that plan.
Yeah.
You'd like to get away from it at some point, but
yes.
it's not something that we're going to do right away. It's
Yeah.
not in the near future. The only other thing I will say is We are looking at some expenses coming forward, and we have a lot of old stuff in the ground.
Yeah, but also, you look at our allocation fees, the allocation fees, the sewer development fees were $737,000, of which 500,000 hasn't been paid yet.
Right.
So, as we get, you start getting, if you bring Scenic Park on, that's a big chunk of money, and it's a lot of users, and
That's a lot of
it's a
users.
a lot of money. So I just want to be careful about saying, oh, we have big expenses coming in the future, but overburdening people now.
Yeah, I get
So-
that part of it. I'm saying, like, when we set how much we think we should keep in here, I think right now we have to look at, as part of that, we have to look at, we have some aging infrastructure that's
Right.
gonna be coming due. And that's, we have to be cognizant of that.
Yeah.
And not that I wanna take from where we're at with
Right.
supplementing, but, I wanna be prepared rather than jumping through hoops trying to find money that we don't have.
Yeah, so,
It's just that with the deferred maintenance of the past is catching up to us.
And that's my concern.
And the thing is just going, we're gonna have to pay it at some point, but I'd rather start putting something in place so we can start fixing, or replacing, some of this old infrastructure, because we're one step away from it failing, and then all of a sudden, it's gonna be that much worse off. And,
We've seen it in other towns, and it's catastrophic. It's,
look at Plymouth.
Yep.
So and Nolan's property taxes are going down, they're always going up, so, we gotta do what in it with inflation, so anything we can do to soften the blow,
yeah.
and if we can help them as a ratepayer, I'm not gonna complain, if we can stabilize the rates so they don't go up.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think we're at a point where we can stabilize for a while but still maintain enough to keep ourselves safe with some of the infrastructure that's gonna be coming. So I think this is a good discussion. I assume that we should probably bring this back again, and so
I
you
think.
talked about the 15%, and then you also talked about the 3 month. So, there's two different options there. Those are both viable options, but
We could combine them. So if you combine those both, so if based on an operating budget, and most enterprise funds, it's based on the operating budget. So if you use the $1.5 million operating budget, not including your reserve and not including your indirect costs, those two numbers combined of the 3 months plus the 15% is like 600,573. If you use the total expenditures, which are $1.7 million, then that number becomes 705,000.
it's still not.
So those to me are your minimum numbers, like maintain those numbers, and then above those numbers, think about what's reasonable to use as supporting the rates. How much did we get in allocation fees that we can use? I still think if we got $254,000 of allocation fees last year, and we've already gotten 113,000 this year, just continue to use 150,000 of retained earnings for the rates, and
But my question would be, are you looking to put that in here as a minimum?
I think we could talk about, that our goal is to maintain this as a minimum, and then to discuss, because I think if we don't have a minimum, we have no benchmark to talk about.
Right.
We don't know whether $1 million is, and maybe that's not the right, maybe those are not the right factors. Maybe we should do 3 months plus what's on the 5-year capital plan. I'm not.
So why don't we defer and let Matt have a chance to dig into it and look and see what his
Yeah.
thoughts are, and then we'll kind of come back to it and hash it
Yeah.
out a little bit. Matt, is that,
Yeah, do you have an interest in having an enterprise fund stabilization fund and then a free cash balance?
Well, we do have a stabilization fund. We did set up a stabilization
Okay.
fund for the sewer that we were supposed to be putting the allocation fees into. But the problem with that is in the account, the way you have to certify it, you have to certify it, becomes retained earnings, and then you have to vote it into the stabilization fund, which we could actually do, because we could certify it, and then in November, we could vote it into the stabilization fund. I don't know if we then have to wait for that to get certified before we spend that.
But I think you need the
That's a
2/3
question.
to spend it, right? I think then you'd have
Yeah,
to.
but I'm not worried about that.
Yeah,
I'm not worried about that.
but still, it's quite the
So we've
process.
never actually put any of the allocation fees into that stabilization fund, but we did set up on our rates page, instead of retained earnings, we put in a slot that was allocation sewer development prior year applied to the rates. And that's how I would like to start.
You used the prior year to apply to the rates?
Yeah, it's kind of like what we used to do with, the way we've thought about excess host community fee at ISWAM, to say, okay, so much of our excess host community fee is going to go to support the ratepayers.
Right.
And so it's dependent on getting that income and not making it retained, it is retained earnings. That actually is coming from retained earnings, but it's different than saying it's retained earnings. So that's we're gonna have to vote our budget for the town meeting and how much retained earnings we're going to use, so that's a discussion we can have when we do that vote.
Yeah, when do we have to do that? So, on this particular one, we'll give Matt an opportunity to take a look at it, and we'll have some discussion, and then we'll bring it
Yeah.
back. Maybe after town meeting. I don't think we're gonna get before then, so. Well, you never know. All right, so we'll put that on a future agenda to discuss. Takes care of 6B. On to 7, DPW Director Report.
So just a couple things. We sent all the fog letters out. We've received a couple responses so far. We gave them till the end of March, so it gives people time to really dig into. We've got a few questions, which has been good. I think it's definitely going to open up a dialogue at first. It'll probably take time to really get everything in order
Yeah.
and running exactly how we want it, but it's definitely going to start a dialogue and get the information we need into the department.
Well, it's good that people are responding, especially questions. Questions are always good. That means somebody read it. So that's good.
I'm working with an engineering firm called EGR. Currently, I'm finalizing a scope for the hideaway hydrogen sulfide issue. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible because I want to keep the engineering costs down, and I want to have the most simple design for us as possible too. So I'm hoping probably within the next couple weeks we'll have something to bring to Marlene and hopefully to you guys for at least a design, the engineering to start the design process.
Okay.
Next month. MJ brought up 340 Main Street. I was going to go over that in my report. So they did come before the Board of Selectmen for 51 seats for the Grill and More. So what they're doing is the 24 seats inside, the 27 seats outside. So they will have 9 seats available for that next restaurant. As soon if they change that use or add more seats, that will come back before the board. And there's one more thing. We received the report from the SCADA repairs that were done back in November that Kubota did at the plant. I haven't had a chance to really dig into them yet and see. They did make a few. They used some of the spares that were there. So we'll probably have to replace those. I'm trying to compare that to a critical spares list we have and see what actually needs to be repaired. But they haven't billed us yet. They haven't sent us any invoices yet, and it should, from my understanding, it should be covered under warranty.
Right.
But if we get any invoice or anything, we'll bring them directly to you guys.
And we
prior to
discussed
paying.
that too, that a lot of this should be under
Okay.
warranty. And when they were here, I think we even mentioned that a lot of that
Yeah,
should be
because
covered.
there were
But some things
continual
weren't, though.
problems.
Yeah. They
What?
were-
Some things weren't, though.
I think that they eventually agreed that, the system should have been running and functioning more properly, and I think the final agreement was that most of it, if not all, would be covered. I think that was the final assessment. I could be wrong.
I think that was, I don't remember meeting with them. So I think it might have been before I came on
I think it
board,
was.
that discussion. But if we receive anything, I'll let you guys know.
Yeah.
Perfect.
They're supposed to pay for it.
Okay.
Anything else?
That was all I had, no.
That's it? All right. We don't have any minutes, correspondence, I don't think we have any of those. Uh,
That would be MJ anyhow.
And then, future agenda items, we're gonna bring both of these back. Anything else that anybody has on the top of their mind for a future agenda item? Okay, and then committee reports, does anybody have any of those? Seeing none, next meeting date is March 26th. And just a reminder, next week we do not have a select board meeting either. So I will take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.